podcast features Audrey Schindler, East Boston High School's Program Director of English Language Arts and Humanities, Advanced Placement Coordinator, and Dean of Grade 11. Audrey has worked at East Boston High since 2001, teaching English at all grade levels before moving into administrative roles. In this podcast, you'll hear how being a teacher before becoming an administrator was crucial to help implement change.
You know, that's when I really started working with JFY and Achieve 3000, not from a teacher standpoint, but from an administrator standpoint. And I think that was really helpful, to have both sides of that. I already knew who you were, and then I could talk about it as a teacher, and then I could talk about it as, an administrator trying to make some changes.
How standardizing platforms help students meet grade level standards.
As an admin team, we developed slide deck that all teachers across the school had to use. So we developed this whole school slide deck system. We had a common grading policy. And the reason behind it was that students would be able to focus on the content that they were learning and not on figuring out how to manipulate and kind of get through unfamiliar technology.
And how JFY's innovative AI-enhanced essay tool has helped teachers provide quick feedback to students about their writing.
And so the purpose behind getting AI programming involved, and this is where you guys have really stepped up and come in and said, I think we can help you with this. And it's been really helpful because I don't know about AI programming. I don't know how to do this stuff, and so to have your team kind of have the time to figure out how to get this to work.
This podcast was created by JFYNetWorks, a Boston-based nonprofit provider of blended learning resources, training, and support. JFY's individualized self-paced curriculum helps raise individual and school performance by recovering learning loss, reaching and maintaining grade-level skills, and achieving college and career readiness. For JFYNetWorks, I'm Greg Cunningham. At the MassCue Convention on May 31st, Audrey Schindler will partner with JFYNetWorks for a presentation on East Boston High's dramatic academic progress over the past 9 years, which includes the total recovery of pandemic learning loss in 2022 and the EdVestor's School on the Move Prize in 2023. Audrey is a star within the Boston Public Schools. She was named Boston Educator of the Year in 2008, received the Mass Insight Educator of the Year Award in 2013, and was one of the Kleis Nobel Top 10 National Educators of the Year in 2014. She enjoys working with students and with staff members and feels that her current position gives her the best of both worlds. This recent conversation with JFY's Executive Director Gary Kaplan is a preview of the upcoming MassCue presentation on May 31st at Polar Park in Worcester.
Audrey, thank you very much for giving us this time this afternoon. We're very happy to have an opportunity to discuss our long collaboration for the past 10 years or so. I would like to just start by asking, how did you do this? In 2014, things were so bad that people were talking about receivership.
2015 or 16, I went back into ninth grade.
Okay.
And it was one of the choices that Phil made. He was trying to restructure some of the teachers, because our MCAS scores and everything like that were not where they should be. We started doing a lot of work around things. We brought back writing prompts, whole school writing prompts. And so that became something that we do several times a year. And then in, I think it was 2017, I transitioned from the classroom into being the program director. And that's when I started meeting with, the admin department and really looking at data from a whole school level, whole school as opposed to just the department. And that's when I really started working with JFY and Achieve 3000, not from a teacher standpoint, but from an administrator standpoint. And I think that was really helpful, to have both sides of that. I already knew who you were, and then I could talk about it as a teacher, and then I could talk about it as, an administrator trying to make some changes.
What's the difference between the teacher's point of view and the administrator's point of view?
I think it's the scope of what you can look at. So when I was a teacher, I didn't see other teachers' data. I think they can now, obviously, with the reports, but at the time I was only seeing my own data. So I could go in and I could look at individual students, obviously, and see how they were doing and make a plan with them on an individual, like one-to-one basis. And then as an administrator, I can see the individual students, but I can also see the teachers. And I can say to the teachers, hey, what's going on with these particular students? Or I notice trends among teachers as well. And so if a teacher is not doing the expectation, then obviously I can talk to the teacher about like what's going on. Or if a teacher is being very successful, what are they doing as well? I know the past couple of years, we've had some teachers that really took what was happening with Achieve 3000 and they developed these really strong lesson plans around it, especially around the focus areas. And then they shared that with the rest of the department, and that was very helpful.
Was it difficult switching from a colleague relationship to a supervisor relationship?
No.
Oh.
I had a great department. I have a lot of really good working relationships with the teachers, and they really make it easy for me, honestly, because I think I already had this working relationship as a colleague with them. I use that kind of to my advantage. I already knew and I still know what these teachers are going through. And I always try to remember that, that's always my focus.
Did you feel like things changed quickly when you came into that role, or was it like pushing a rock up the hill?
I think people were ready for a change. I think that, we had some momentum, and I think that the momentum really picked up then. We put some things in place right away. We started really taking the MCAS exams from the past and really kind of going through the data a lot more carefully. We pulled out where students were doing well as where they needed more support. We kind of worked backwards. So we were looking at college and career skills that students needed. And then we went to the senior year and the junior year and the sophomore year and the freshman year, kind of helping us to figure out what each grade needed to focus on. And we really, as a department and as a school, we were asking ourselves why. So what was it that we were doing that in our classes that was successful? And then what did we need to focus on? And we built lessons around those areas that we needed support with.
And that had not been done before.
It had been done, but with each, you get new groups of teachers in, you get new students, it's never like you do it one time and it's over with. It's something that has to be looked at, throughout the years. And I think that, one of the things that we did was we knew that we needed the teachers who worked specifically with our MCAS grade levels. We needed those teachers to work together. And so we got time for them to meet and work as a group specifically for MCAS. We don't do that anymore, but we did do that at the time. And I think that was really helpful.
Well, the timeline here is interesting. You took over the job in 2017. In the 2016-17 school year, your ELA MCAS score was the lowest, pretty much the lowest it had ever been. It was 66, proficient and advanced at the time. So you go from 66 in 2017 to 74 in 2018. You jumped up, what is that, 8 points? In 1 year, you made quite a bit of difference.
Well, I mean, I think the whole community, the whole school, everybody really worked hard. And we had a lot of support. It wasn't just the teachers in the classrooms working their magic, but also we had support from outside organizations and programs and everything. And we also, we were really happy with the results. And then we were worried because we're like, wow, now we've jumped. Now we need to keep moving up. And that gets harder and harder to do, and then we were switching to a new MCAS. And so that was a transition as well, and again, like I'm putting a lot of emphasis on MCAS, but it's not all about MCAS. I mean, we have a lot of different things that we want our students to be successful with, but DESE does, rate us based off of MCAS scores.
In 2022, the commissioner, Jeff, says it's going to take 5 years. Don't everybody expect too much, because it's going to take 5 years to get back from that. You got all the way, not only all the way back to where you were in 2019 before the pandemic, which was at 30%, you got to 38. You were 8 points above where you had been in before the pandemic in 2019. You were one of a few schools in the state that got all the way back to pre-pandemic levels. Were you aware during that school year that you were really making progress?
So let me go back a little bit if I can. When the new MCAS was coming out, I joined the MCAS development team. And when I did that, I learned how the MCAS test was developed, how the texts were chosen, how questions were formulated, and the general thinking behind each type of question.
Is that a statewide thing?
Yeah. Yes. So, you're not allowed to talk about the texts that you look at. You're not allowed to talk about questions that come up. But what I learned from that was really the process. And I think that was helpful. So, the problem with the new MCAS is not the fact that we were testing on specific standards or anything like that. It's a new format, it's a new computer platform, and we have we had like one sample test to go on. And I think that, as the years have gone by since this, we obviously have more tests to look at, and that's been extremely helpful. We use those, we use those, and then we mimic those. We develop our own questions that kind of mimic MCAS to the best of our ability. So there's that aspect. When the pandemic hit, we, along with everyone else, like you mentioned, we had to transition to all online learning. And that was huge. In Boston, we weren't allowed to ask students, or we weren't allowed to tell students they had to turn their cameras on in Zoom. And so, if you have 30 kids and their cameras are off, and they're all muted, it's difficult to know who's engaged in your class and who's not. But our teachers really were amazing. They did the best they could. We also offered office hours, so students could come and talk to teachers during these office hours. And one of the other things that we did was we, as an admin team, we developed slide deck that all teachers across the school had to use. So we developed this whole school slide deck system. We had a common grading policy. And the reason behind it was that students would be able to focus on the content that they were learning and not on figuring out how to manipulate and kind of get through unfamiliar technology. And after we returned to school from the pandemic, we kept this slide deck system and grading system, and we've used it ever since. And I think that, we had some resistance with that from some of the teachers, but the students absolutely know what to expect when they walk into a classroom. They know what this particular slide means. They know what the expectations for grading is. So I think that that's a big piece of this. I also think that one of the things that happened with the pandemic was that because we were transitioning to all online learning, we had things already in place like Achieve 3000 and the math program MathSpace. So students already knew how to use the system. They already knew how to use the platform. And so that became something that was like a staple for a lot of the teachers' work. they knew that they could rely on that because they didn't have to teach the students how to use that. So, again, after we returned to school, our scores went down, but we're able to jump back up, taking a village approach. That's what I call it.
The slide decks, what's in those slide decks?
So we always have a starting position, which is at the start of the week, and that's some sort of question that relates to the content that the teachers are going to be focused on for the week. There's reflect and connect, there's show what you know, there's like reflection questions. There's a whole bunch of things that happen in those, and it depends on the day. But at the start of the week, the students always start with a specific question to focus on. And then at the end of the week, the students always reflect back on what they've learned and kind of reiterate, the main focus of the week. They share slide decks as well. And that helps, so that we kind of have alignment with a lot of our classes. It's not a perfect system and it's not finished. We're constantly refining it. But it definitely is very helpful, when a 10th grade teacher can share a slide deck for what she's doing with the other 10th grade teachers, so everyone's aware. The other thing is that we have access to all of each other's slide deck.
Going back a second, you said that in putting all this stuff together, you mimic MCAS. You use MCAS as a sort of template, and you mimic MCAS. So a lot of people would say, so you're teaching to the test. What do you say to that?
So as an AP teacher, the response that I always heard was that if the test is a valid, useful test, then there should be nothing wrong with using the materials and everything in the same way. However, what I will say is that we don't do it all the time, but we mimic the questions and the format and everything like that from the MCAS because we don't want the formatting to get in the way. We want the content to stand out. We want the students to be tested on the content, not on the platform. And again, it's a work in progress. And one of the things that we've really learned, we know that our students struggle with reading, which is really why a program like Achieve 3000 can help them, because it's based off of their Lexile levels. And the other thing is writing, just how writing, our scores were kind of not great in the writing aspect of the MCAS for math and science as well. And so that became something that we really wanted to focus on, so that we're making sure that the students are not writing one sentence, responses, but writing enough, if that makes sense.
Of course, the only way you can teach writing is by writing. I mean, the only way you learn writing is by writing and having your writing critiqued. And then how can teachers assign more writing assignments when every writing assignment produces a pile of papers that they have to take home in the evening or on the weekend or something? And I think we at that time had just begun to look at AI, artificial intelligence, and there was this is going back now, almost 2 years or a good year and a half. And, we thought, well, this AI stuff that people are talking about, maybe that can be used. And now we've been doing it all this year since I think we started with the September prompt. I know how it looks from our point of view, but how does it look like from your side?
So I think that it's fascinating that we're doing this. You and I have had a lot of conversations about just how buried our teachers can become with grading, especially English teachers, with the amount of writing that students are expected to produce. And it's not simply about grading, but it's about also providing feedback. And that feedback needs to be relevant, it needs to be specific, and it really needs to be timely. And so, it really doesn't do much good if a student receives a piece of writing that they've done from 3 weeks ago and they get some feedback on it and they're not invested in it anymore, right? They're not involved in it. And so the purpose behind getting AI programming involved. And this is where you guys have really stepped up and come in and said, I think we can help you with this. And I'm like, what? It's really, it's a work in progress, obviously. And it's been really helpful because I don't know about AI programming. Like, I don't know how to do this stuff, and so to have your team kind of have the time to figure out how to get this to work. Is it perfect right now? No, it's not. It's not a perfect system, but we're learning. And what I really love about it so far is that when the feedback for the students comes, it's bulleted, it's very specific. It's like, you know what, your thesis statement is too generic. Okay. So then the teacher can look at that feedback and say, wow, I have 20 kids out of 25 in my room where their thesis statement is too generic, and we need to focus on that. Or, you're choosing evidence, but the evidence isn't related to what you're trying to say. So there's that aspect. There's also the fact that, as teachers, we like to think that we know what we're saying all the time, right? But a lot of times we say the same things over and over again, and it just doesn't always get through to every single student. And so what AI has done is it's come through with some very straightforward language, and it's put in a way that as a teacher, I might not write like that, but AI is saying, this is your feedback. Do this, do this, do this, do this. And the kids are like, oh, okay, I can do that. And so now, have we noticed some issues? Absolutely, but we're working on those. And I think that over time, AI is constantly developing. I mean, when we think back to a year and a half or 2 years ago, Gary, the whole thing has completely shifted and changed. I mean, it's always changing. So we're always going to have to be changing as a result of that. But the goal is for, JFY to be able to hopefully teach my teachers how to program AI, like how to do some simple commands so that when they do smaller writing pieces, they can instantly generate feedback for students. And when I say instantly, I mean, we're talking like a minute, 30 seconds, something like that. And I'm sure that will get faster too, if our systems can keep up with it. But, there's so much out there about the disadvantages of artificial intelligence. And I think that this stands to be something that is an advantage.
It's not about, scoring. Scoring kind of comes into the discussion because of MCAS and because, we are in a quantitative environment, but it's not so much, is this a 4 or a 5 or a 3.5 or a 5.5? It's really the critique itself. That's really the value of it. Do a writing assignment. Everybody does their stuff. You take it, you feed it in. Within let's call it 10 minutes, everybody's got their results, and you can actually have a discussion about it right there in the same class period. That would be kind of amazing, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, and that's the whole part about feedback, that it needs to be timely. I think a lot of people are worried that AI is going to take over jobs, and, teachers are like, oh, they won't need me anymore. That's not true. Like you said, it's not about the score. It's almost like a second set of eyes on something. And hopefully it's unbiased. And AI doesn't know the student. So you can't, say, oh, this kid is a nice kid, and therefore I'm sure they meant to say this. It's all about, this is what they said, this is what they produced, and this is the feedback based off of what was produced.
But also the feedback that the system is giving is created by the stuff that we feed into it, which we got from the teachers.
Right.
So this is really the teachers' ideas and points of view fed into the system, which then does the evaluation based on the rubric and all of the comments and all the other previous judgments that have been fed into it.
Right.
So those comments are coming from the teachers.
Exactly. And I think that, one of the things that has been very valuable is when, you guys have had those meetings with us, and you've come in and you've asked very specific questions about, what do we want to see? What is working? What isn't working? And then really, we submitted different examples of or exemplars of student writing. We have definitely, the teachers have provided really, like you said, what they're looking for. And then you guys are there to help us, and you've been there like helping us figure this out. And it's really amazing.
How important in the whole scope of things, how important do you think writing is?
I think that writing is probably the most important thing in terms of communication, because this is how we read other people's writing, right? And we've done that for centuries. And so I think that it's a way to communicate something about humanity to an audience, right? To society, to humankind. I don't even know. It's communication, and it's linking past, present, and future. And I think that that's really pretty valuable.
Yeah, I'm very glad you're going to MassCUE. I think you're going to be there. We're going to demonstrate to people how we do the reading stuff with Achieve. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the AI thing. Most of the AI is going to be done in a different session in what they're calling innovation workshop. Most of that discussion will go on there. This is a collaboration that's been going on for almost 10 years now that has really produced a lot of really good stuff. But we would not have been able to do any of this stuff without you, without a really good and committed collaborator. So thank you.
And thank you, because we wouldn't have been able to do this, without you. I think, it's really the thing I love is I'll say something to you guys. I'm like, whoa, I was thinking about this. And then you come up with these ideas.
And we should give credit to Phil for all of this.
He's very supportive. He cares. He wants us to
Absolutely. Absolutely. Audrey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
We would like to thank Audrey Schindler for joining the JFYNetWorks podcast. We hope you'll look for us at the MassCue Convention at Polar Park in Worcester on May 31st and June 1st. If you have any questions or comments, please navigate to our website, jfynet.org, which features a wealth of commentary, dialogue, and free educational resources, including these monthly podcasts, to support all education communities. Thank you for joining us. For JFYNetWorks, I'm Greg Cunningham.